Welcome to The Big Picture, a show that takes a deep dive into the political landscape of not only America, but right here in our own backyard of Illinois.
It's showtime, folks.
The Big Picture is on WCPT 820. And now, here's your host, Edwin Eisendrath.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is, as you can imagine, I am recording almost the entire show early for today because I am, as you're listening to this, I'm out at a No Kings rally. I believe in a rainstorm, but we'll see, in Chicago with many of my new friends. But I'm here with you on tape, and I will be back for your calls at the end of the show. So in the meantime, I have some great guests and a pretty great show. But before we get to that, I want to focus your attention on a couple things. We do not know how many people the feds have arrested or detained in Chicago. We don't know how many people they've arrested and detained anywhere because ICE no longer shares data with Americans. They had an online data portal. It's no longer updated. Now, private groups are trying to piece together the facts, but dishonest press releases from the government are meant to reinforce their power rather than to share facts with the American public. It's disgraceful. The Trump administration's opacity hides its lawlessness. And remember, some 1,800 migrants held in that terrible prison camp in the Florida Everglades simply disappeared. Efforts to find out what happened to these men continue, but the government won't cooperate. According to the Miami Herald, lawyers can't find their clients. Disappeared in America. It's a disgrace. On our streets, American citizens have been tased. We've had our necks knelt on like George Floyd. We've been held outside in the rain in our underwear. We've had the doors of our homes blown off. We've had to watch armed men in masks and camo gear come zip tie our children. These are U.S. citizens I'm talking about. We're not being protected by our government. We're being attacked. ProPublica found more than 170 American citizens held in captivity, not for crimes, but on suspicion that they might not be Americans. And while detained, reporters found incidents where they were kicked and dragged and otherwise abused. And many of them were not allowed to contact their families or their attorneys for more than 24 hours. Americans, by our own government. And you know what? Americans are also held when ICE accuses us of impeding their work. But in example after example, those accusations are lies. When the evidence is finally heard, as it was in Chicago recently, ICE's claims do not hold up. In fact, more often than not, if you take a picture when ICE is aiming a gun at you, you're the one who gets arrested. This is America today. This is Chicago today. Ground zero in this fight. One man was murdered by ICE here. Others have been shot. Many have been gassed or shot with non-lethal ammunition. Cars have been rammed by ICE vehicles. A priest was attacked and mocked by federal agents. ICE claims to have arrested more than 1,500 people here. But as I said at the beginning, who knows, right? Those claims can't be verified. Last week, a judge looked at this evidence and enjoined ICE from attacking the press and protesters without cause or warning. And yep, they ignored the order right away. Without warning or provocation, ICE agents again tear-gassed protesters in the press. That led the judge this week to order ICE to wear body cameras going forward. And another judge said, no, there's no rebellion on the ground. You can't send in the National Guard. I know the Texas folks are here and you federalized them, but they can't be used. And of course, the Trump administration appealed that and lost. Now go to the Supreme Court, I guess, but really, it's terrible. And you know what? The government has this fancy Palantir software They have the ability to identify and arrest those who are violating their visa status and who have committed crimes. Instead, the government is choosing to attack a whole city. Our government, our city. And Chicagoans, we are not having any of it. We are doing what we can to protect each other. By now, most people in the city, we know what rights we still have and how to assert them. We are documenting their occupation. Reporters are embedded with protesters, and the truth is coming out. And that truth, it is that despite the aggressive tactics of the feds, Chicagoans are responding peacefully. I see this every day. And now even the New York Times is reporting it. Here's what they said yesterday. Residents have begun forming volunteer groups to monitor their neighborhoods for federal immigration agents. They went on. Others honk their horns or blow whistles when they see ICE agents nearby. People are organizing together to protect each other. And the video evidence leaves no doubt. Armed ICE agents in camo gear and masks can be seen in video after video throwing tear gas canisters at peaceful citizens guilty of nothing except bearing witness and taking pictures. America, listen, this is what's happening here. And instead of being subdued, you know what? Trump faces a city determined to be free. Instead of a city accepting his lies, he faces a city determined to make sure the truth comes out. And as government violence escalates here in Chicago, and as Chicagoans continue to resist, I believe Americans everywhere are inspired. This may be the city where American fascism finally dies. Have a great time on that. I think it's a great show. And if you can be at a No Kings rally and you're listening on your way there, even better. Again, I have great guests. You're going to love them all. And I will be back to take your calls at 3:30 Chicago time. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, I'm joined once again after far too long by Charlotte Clymer. She's, of course, a veteran, a trans woman. She is the very smart author of Charlotte's Web Thoughts. And again, we are very long overdue for a catch-up. So now here we are. I'm overdue in this conversation, Charlotte, and I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all, Edwin. My goodness, it's been a while, but it's also been a long year on every front.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have not spoken since the November disaster, I don't think.
No, we haven't. I can't believe that. Goodness gracious. But we're here now, and it feels so good to be back in your company.
Well, look, I think I want to lean into your military service to begin, because there's so much to talk about the armed services, the leadership of the armed services, what they're being asked to do. And I kind of want to get your thoughts about, I don't know where to start. The attacks on anyone in our military who doesn't fit Pete Hegseth's image of what a warrior is.
Yeah, that's right. First of all, we've, seen Hegseth basically try to make the military into, I would say, something that only looks like him and thinks like him. Pete Hegseth's vision for the U.S. military is one without women, without men of color in leadership positions, without LGBTQ people overall, without religious minorities. He really wants to remake the U.S. military into his version of a Christian male army, white male army, I should say.
I don't understand that. I mean, that's not in America's interests. That is not how best to keep us safe. That's not how to prevent war in the world. I mean, what's that for?
That is for his base. That's the red meat. Here's how I see this. Our economy is faltering, big time. Uh, Prices are rising. Employment has stagnated. We really have not had a good economic quarter or even a good economic month all year. The tariffs are incoming and about to wipe out much of the progress that was made under President Biden's administration. Then you have things like the Epstein files, which hover like a dark cloud over this entire administration. And then you have Hegseth's just careening from scandal to scandal during his tenure as the head of as the head of the Department of Defense. They really need a distraction. They really need a way to deflect the pressure that's being put on them by many in their base and across the right wing, because a lot of folks in their orbit are not happy with them right now. And so, I see Hegseth and Trump using the military as a way of saying, do you remember why you elected us? Do you remember how, you wanted us to come in and clean shop and not let the military remind you of the things you hate? Because a lot of these people in his base, they look at the military, they see women in senior leadership positions, they see lesbian, gay, and bisexual people serving openly. They see Black men, Black women, religious minorities serving in leadership positions, and they can't stand it. To them, the appearance, even just the appearance of that, constitutes quote unquote wokeness. So this is their way of relieving some of the pressure on them by their base. They want to mollify their base with this red meat so that they can deflect blame and criticism for how poorly this administration has conducted itself this year.
I want to say, I know this is going to sound strange, but if you're right, I'm relieved. Because what you're describing is the use of the military for a political purpose, for sure. One that will, that just says, I mean, as you describe anti-wokeness, it's indistinguishable from just base bigotry and racism. And you're saying, well, look, they're throwing that side of their party a bone. I actually worry that it's worse. And as bad as that is, I worry it's worse because I live in Chicago, which is under attack not from the military, but the president wants the military here. That he stands in front of the military and tries to make them partisan. That he invites all of the leadership of the military to a meeting, and instead of having something private to tell them, the only excuse for bringing them there, they broadcast it to the whole world, in effect saying to the soldiers underneath them, put pressure on your military leadership to be partisan, and getting rid of the JAG Corps so that there's nobody to tell them what the laws are, so they're free to bomb ships in the Caribbean, or I'm afraid send troops to my city. I mean, I fear it's worse than just confirming their horrid racism and bigotry.
Yeah, no, and those are well-grounded fears. We have seen the right wing for a long time use the military as something of a cultural cudgel against the country in various ways. We saw that certainly with the war on terrorism, when the right wing kind of, wrapped itself around the military as like a shield against any sort of criticism. If you were against the war, you were somehow against the military, against the troops. If you were against government surveillance under the Patriot Act, somehow you were unpatriotic and not appreciative of the sacrifices of the military. Now, most of those of us who are veterans and actually served, we know that's complete nonsense. That's ridiculous. But now it's escalated to a point where Trump has gone somewhere that no Republican would have dared go before. Now he's literally using troops as physical pawns in the domestic political arena. I don't I'll be honest with you, and this is going to sound really controversial to a lot of the folks who are listening. I am not worried about National Guard troops opening fire on U.S. citizens. I'm just not. I think that, the vast majority of these folks who are serving in the National Guard, they don't want to be deployed. They don't want to go into American cities and, play this needless babysitter role. They see it as unnecessary and ridiculous. And in fact, here in DC, I've gone and talked with some of these National Guard troops off the record, just by introducing myself as a veteran and asking them how they feel about things. They don't see the point in them being there. They don't understand what the objective is for them being deployed in cities like DC and Portland, and the threats, of course, to occupy Chicago, so to speak. So, I'm not worried about the military doing the wrong thing. What I am worried about is the precedent this sets for normalizing unconstitutional actions by Donald Trump and his ilk. That's why we have to push back against this.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about our safety. I am worried about the lawlessness that this leads to.
Okay. I'm very glad to hear. I've been asking people, and everyone agrees, and you do too, clearly, that you're not worried about a Tiananmen Square kind of incident in the United States. You
Not
just
at all.
think not at all, because the people in the military, and they won't do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that people are right to be concerned. I think they're right to have images of Tiananmen Square come up, and certainly the way that Hitler gathered all of his troops or all the German troops into, a building at the beginning of the Third Reich and had them swear an oath to him and not to the German Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So, these are rational fears, but it does not. It does not align well with those of us who are veterans and know that.
Yeah. I agree with that, actually, and I'm delighted about that. What I see in my city, of course, are the ICE and the Customs and Border Patrol folks who are not well trained, who just took a bounty to join up for the purpose of being Trump's warriors, and they are behaving unprofessionally, aggressively. They are ratcheting up the violence in my city on a daily basis, violating court orders on a daily basis, and I think offending the Americans in every state in the country.
Oh yeah, no, that is so. That is the militarization of law enforcement is something we should be grievously worried about.
Yeah, they're not trained for this, and the military has a purpose, and that purpose is not law enforcement; it's victory on a battlefield, and making other people so terrified you can keep the peace.
That's right, and the other thing too is that the law enforcement is legally less accountable than the military. Law enforcement is able to get away with, I don't want this to come across as me being anti-law enforcement. It's not meant to be. There are so many law enforcement in our country who are doing the right thing, who are trying to protect the public. That's not the issue. The issue, though, is that, under the Supreme Court's own rulings, law enforcement are largely exempt from accountability in so many ways that the military never would be.
Yeah.
And now, not only that, we're seeing this tacit acceptance of scenarios in which men who are masked don't identify themselves either by agency or title or what have you, can bust into someone's neighborhood or someone's home, kidnap somebody, throw them into the back of a van, and never need to reveal any information about themselves whatsoever. What's to stop you and me from dressing up one day masking ourselves and kidnapping someone off the street, and then giving off the assumption that we're somehow part of ICE?
I have a good answer to that question. A moral compass, which you have and I have, and so these guys do not have, right? That's what's stopping us from doing this lawless behavior. And there isn't, I want to just assure you, from a city that's living through this, there is no tacit acceptance of these mass ghouls running around our city terrorizing people. It's my great hope that Chicago is this emperor's Waterloo. That the bravery of the people in this city who are standing up to this nonsense day in and day out, they're standing there with their phones and they take a picture of a guy pointing a rifle in their face, and then they get arrested for it. And then the rest of the folks come out and take pictures of the arrest. And then the ICE guys throw tear gas canisters all over a city street. And these images are out there, and the citizens aren't being violent. They're protesting, they're taking pictures, and these people are behaving in this terrible way. I just think what we're doing here is going to make America turn in a way that will be bigger than their gerrymander against these guys.
I think so too. And I think this strategy is backfiring horribly. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out to your governor, Governor Pritzker, who has just stood tall as a great leader in this moment.
Yep. I think JB's done a great job. I think across the board, our elected leaders here have done a great job. I mean, even we have local aldermen with air horns chasing ICE people out of their districts. They're here and honking the horns and running around. And this moment has also made leaders out of ordinary citizens who have organized to bring food to families who are afraid to go out of their houses, or who've organized to go to schools at drop-off times to make sure the kids get home and back safely. It's really, we've seen, leadership in and out of politics at every level to resist this horrific attempted takeover of a great American city.
And Chicago's not backing down. Chicago is no one's second city. Let's put it that way.
Well, whatever we are, we're not pushovers. I mean, we've lived through winters. We know how to fight.
That's right.
And anyway, I think it's a beautiful thing here, and I do hope it's their Waterloo for sure. I mean, they pushed all their chips on the table. They want to win it all, and I don't think. Well, maybe they will, but I don't think they will.
They won't. No, Edwin, they won't. Look, things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Don't get me wrong. We're going to see a lot more nonsense coming up. They're not going to prevail in the end. No, they won't.
Yep. I don't think so either. In part because of what we're about to see Saturday. I mean, for those of you who are listening, this whole show is taped early so that we can all be at No Kings wherever we are.
That's right. Over 2,600 protests around the United States, and many protests happening around the world in solidarity with us.
Mm-hmm.
Indivisible and other partnered groups are working to drive out. At this point, it's definitely going to be millions of people. I think it could be tens of millions of people who turn out on Saturday.
Oh, all those Hamas loving, America hating, right? What did they say?
Tom Emmer got up in front of the press corps on the Hill and stood next to Speaker Johnson and said that we are Marxist loving, that we represent the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party. I mean, what an absolute, excuse me for swearing, a scared shitless coward.
Yeah, that unfortunately on the radio that part gets bleeped.
Okay, sorry.
Sometime you'll do it. You'll do a Substack show of mine where that stuff gets through. Yeah. So look, I think that they are terrorized by us.
Mhm.
I think they are. I think they have taught themselves so much to fear and hate anything that doesn't look like them, anything that doesn't think like them. Their propaganda has poisoned their own souls.
Mm.
And so we're indistinguishable from, and that's very dangerous for the country. They do not want to share a country with us. They don't want us here.
No, they don't. No.
Yeah,
Although they
too
do want to
bad.
benefit from they do want to benefit from our economic power. They want to benefit from the fact that we are part of the national fabric. They just don't want us to have any power beyond that.
Yeah, maybe that's right. Although I think they'd be happy if we all left. They're so hateful these days. And what do you think um, I mean, they're trying to say, they're trying to discredit this rally before it happens. I don't think they can mount a counter rally. I think they probably thought about it and they know they can't do it. So, what do you think their reaction's going to be when it's done?
Well, for what it's worth, they did try a counter rally earlier this year with
Right.
Trump's military parade.
I know it fizzled.
Yeah. Oh, it was a disaster.
Well, let me just wait. I watched it. I actually watched the whole thing. I thought it was fascinating, and I thought the military really did a pretty good job of telling the Army history. They didn't go overboard in it's an homage to the king, even though that's what he wanted. I thought it was kind of interesting military history in that parade.
It was. Oh gosh, I watched much of the parade.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, that was the sloppiest marching I've ever seen in any military parade.
It was a little bit sloppy. That's true. And Putin made fun of us for it.
That's right. Yeah. And I think it was intentional.
I agree.
I absolutely think it was intentional. I think that, many members of the military were just fed up with having to be dragged out for this ridiculous exercise and, made their discontent known in a nonverbal way by just not being very sharp.
Right.
But it was noticeable. I mean, that entire day while that parade was going on, I was in text chains with fellow veterans of mine, and we were aghast. We're watching, parts of it and just flummoxed by what we felt was an obvious show of disrespect in the way that they marched in their uniforms. It was really bad.
Yes. All right. I buy that entirely. I still thought it was interesting. And I thought it was interesting in part how bored the commander in chief was sitting there. I loved that too. It was supposed to be his party and it didn't work out that way.
No, it was not his. He did not get his North Korea or Moscow show of reverence.
No,
he didn't get that.
He sure did not. All right,
but I say that to point out that they don't have that kind of commitment. They don't. The biggest demonstrations I've ever seen in DC, let alone from the larger conservative movement, are the what was it? Rally for Life marches that they do in DC annually. That I think comes closest to their ability to mass organize, but even that does not compare even to the No King's Day earlier this year, when there were something like I forget the exact total, but there must have been at least 3 or 4 million Americans.
Yep. It's huge. I mean, I was in an enormous one in Chicago. Yeah.
I was at one in Baltimore, and what I thought was so cool about that, I went to the one in Baltimore. There were Republicans out there. There were conservatives who were fed up with Trump.
Yep.
There were people from different religions, different states who had traveled to the Baltimore one. You had this broad coalition of people, many of whom were outside of the progressive movement and the Democratic Party, who were seeing what's happening in our country and decided they weren't going to take it.
So I say this a lot, and I want to say it again now. It's enormously important, I think, for we Democrats to open our arms to anyone who wants to stand with us and
Yes.
not complain that they don't agree with 100% of what we have in mind, but welcome them.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll go further than that. We should be defending those who we don't like while they're being politically persecuted. I think this.
Give me an example of who you mean, because I have a few that come to mind. Who are you
Sure.
thinking?
Well, mine's John Bolton, easily.
John Bolton.
That man is. He is. I don't think I agree with John Bolton on just about anything. And he has been behind some of the worst chapters in this country's history. But he is being politically persecuted by Trump solely because he spoke out against Trump, solely because he wrote a memoir criticizing Trump.
And here's what I think. I think John Bolton may or may not be guilty of this. I mean, the investigation, I think, began a little bit before Trump. But because Trump is so politicized, because he went after Comey, because he's got his list, you cannot now trust anything that the Justice Department does. You can't.
No.
So I mean, you got to say, look, for the sake of the rule of law, even people who might be guilty, you know what? You can't go after them now this way because you are completely discredited.
Yes,
completely.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and he's added to his list apparently this week. He's put a few more names on it.
Yeah, I mean, we all know he went after Tish James, or he's going after Tish James, Attorney General of New York.
Yep.
He's going after the Comeys, as you mentioned. I mean, here's why it's so important for us to stand with everybody who's being politically persecuted. We don't want to allow him to be able to say that this is not politically motivated. See, I'm attacking Republicans and Democrats. I'm attacking progressives and conservatives. This is not political at all. This is just me trying to follow the rule of law. No. And he's not trying to follow the rule of law.
No.
He's trying to construct a permission structure for him to go after anyone who dissents. We need to stand just as strongly with John Bolton as we do with Tish James, as we do with James Comey.
And these are individuals. I think the next step is using the IRS to go after, nonprofits, NGOs, organizations that fund causes he doesn't believe in. So
that's right.
It's all coming. It's all we've seen this handbook before play out in other countries. On the theme of standing together, inviting people in and defending people from political persecution. Sort of the cousin of that is that Democrats, should not spend a lot of energy speaking ill of each other. And here our biggest fights are always in the family. I don't even know what I am. I can't understand why the winner of a Democratic primary in New York City, for example, is having to fight other Democrats about whether, it's okay to support him. I don't get that. And I don't know why the two biggest leaders in the Democratic Party in Washington, both of whom are from New York, haven't said the winner of the Democratic primary is our candidate in this election. I don't get it.
Yeah. I gotta say, I love so many politicians and activists in New York who are doing the good work. And so I don't want this to sound like a criticism of all New York Democrats, but I gotta say, New York Democratic leadership are not sending us their best right now. I think Senator Schumer has gotten a little better with his communications recently.
Oh, you mean that video he did?
That video was pretty good.
I thought that video, I give him credit for going out there and doing it. Yeah. When he took up a pointer, I was okay. Maybe, the conducting wasn't quite what I want for that symphony, but yeah. Yeah, I
but
give him credit
it's
for that. I give him credit for
as long
trying.
as he's trying, I
Yep,
just want to see an effort being made,
yep,
and
yep.
he finally got the message, and he's doing better comms. So I appreciate that. But you're
And they're
absolutely
holding
right. I
strong
mean,
right now. I mean, both. I give them both credit for what they're doing in this shutdown for sure.
yeah, I think Senator Schumer learned that we're not just going to accept him, um, taking these ridiculous deals with Trump for the hope of bipartisan progress. What he did earlier this year with the shutdown was a terrible move. It backfired. It did not help us down the road. In fact, we're in this mess, very much due to his lack of strategic sense earlier this year.
Yeah,
And I'm
you,
glad
you
he's realized that, and he's standing firm.
you can't have a good deal with a bad partner. That is
No,
just a life lesson. And I think they've. I don't know why the first term didn't teach them that, but I think they now know it.
they now know it. And, if Senator Schumer wants to stay in his seat, let alone in his leadership position, I think he's realizing that, he needs to put on the boxing gloves and, take a couple swings. He's not going to be able to bipartisan his way out of this.
No,
I we we saw some really great achievements under President Biden with some bipartisan cooperation, but the same Republican senators who are part of those solutions are now clearly terrified to speak out against Trump. They're largely useless. It's crazy to me that you have these more moderate Republican senators. Tom Tillis has been a little better lately, so that's good. But Republican senators have largely been useless all year, and it's crazy to me now that the two of the most conservative members of House Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey, are somehow becoming the conscience of the Republican Party in a good way. That is just wild to me. I would not have guessed 6 months ago that these two House members would stand up against Trump and say, yes, we need to release the Epstein files, and we need to do it now.
and because of that, the House has worked 14 days, I think, this year. The government is shut down, and that coward, the Speaker of the House, won't even let the House members go to work to try and pass a budget. That's it.
And
He won't
and
do it.
and won't swear in Adelita Grijalva, the new Congresswoman elect from Arizona's
Nope.
7th district.
Nope. Absolutely not. It's just disgraceful on every front. But my God, he's a terrible leader.
He's bad, and
terrible.
and Mike Johnson. Oh, good Lord! I mean, that man has no soul. I don't say that lightly. I really don't. That man has no soul whatsoever.
It's sort of shocking to see that. When you first hear him and you think he sounds like a decent guy, and then you get to know him, and there's no humanity in there.
No, he has gone from being like a backbencher who has occasional moments of reason to being a functional sociopath in a very short amount of time, which makes me wonder. And I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but it makes me wonder what's going on behind the scenes. What did Trump say to him in the past 6 months that made Mike Johnson think, well, I better just pull out all the sociopathic moves I can. I better protect these pedophiles who are in these files. Excuse me, pedophiles who are in these records.
Yep.
It's not shocking to me. It is incredibly depressing and dark, though.
You don't really, under any circumstances, want the Speaker of the House to be just saying the same things as the White House press spokesperson. And particularly, you don't want any human being to say the things that this White House press spokesperson says on a regular basis. And Johnson's comments are indistinguishable from hers now.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I read, every political newsletter just about every morning. And every now and then, Mike Johnson will say something that deviates maybe a degree or two away from Trump. maybe a degree or two, but it's very subtle. It has no impact whatsoever.
And then he
It's
snaps right back.
it snaps right back. It's as
Yeah.
though he gets texts with talking points every morning, and that's what he says.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to find a happier topic, but I'm not going to because I want to ask you about the Supreme Court. I want to ask you about, the case they're considering. They're considering a lot of important cases. But Louisiana versus Calais is the capstone of John Roberts' entire 20-year leadership in the Supreme Court effort to destroy the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
And I think they will destroy the Voting Rights Act.
They will.
And I think also what we've seen is the result of it will be you will not see any people of color elected from the South. And it'll be like 1960.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's a new Jim Crow. It's a new Donald Trump. And I mean, because now instead of saying you can't vote, they found a way of saying you can vote, but we won't let your votes matter because of the way we draw the maps.
I think this is resolutely bad with a capital B.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it's going to backfire in a big way. Part of Trump's winning coalition last year was overperforming among Black men and Hispanic men. And I think that there is going to be quite a backlash among those voting demographics over this specific issue. Because these members of Congress who have served so faithfully, our country and their communities, when they see them get ousted, and when this really starts making the waves that it will among Black Americans and Latino Americans, it's going to not only kill Trump's gains, the Republican Party's gains among these voting demographics, it's going to lead to a surge of support for Democratic candidates across the country, especially in frontline districts.
I think you're right. I am, but I don't want the country ripped along racial lines. Of course, if you're Black and Hispanic, you're under absolute attack by this racist administration, and their numbers will be, I think, appalling next time in those communities. But when will white men in America say, you know what, it's just not okay to behave that way? I mean, I'm a white guy, and I think it's the most appalling thing in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I think LBJ would have certainly agreed with you.
Right.
Here's this very Southern man who himself, by his own admission, was pretty racist throughout his career, who was singularly instrumental in getting the Voting Rights Act implemented in the first place. And I think there are a lot of white men in this country who are on the fence, who might be moderates, many of them conservatives. George Conway. My friend George Conway, who has been a conservative all his life, he was part of the whole Monica Lewinsky nonsense in the 90s. Not a fan of Bill Clinton. He's spoken out against this. Bill Kristol has spoken out against it. We're seeing a lot of conservative white men in this country who know this is wrong and who refuse to accept it, even if they might have bigger issues. Ideological issues with the Democratic Party and the progressive movement. They can recognize that this is a racist attack on the Americans' right to vote and have representation in Congress.
Yep.
I take hope from that.
I do too, and I want to. Somebody said to me the other day, "Look, there are 37 things you can point to every week that are disgraceful that this administration does." I mean, let me give you one more example. Remember how crazy the right wing was when Joe Biden had somebody just talk to Facebook and say, the public health information you're sharing could be killing people. Maybe you should look at some other things. And they screamed censorship, and they held hearings. And of course, those hearings proved there wasn't censorship, but nonetheless, they made a big deal out of it, like it was the greatest crime ever. And yet, last week, Meta pulled all of the Facebook sites about where is ICE down because Trump told them to, right? That real censorship. And by the way, it's perfectly legal for Americans to say, I see the police out there, I see ICE out there. But they pulled it down anyway. They was censored, right? So you got an example like that. But there are like 37 of them a week. How do we decide which ones we should focus on? Which ones should we be screaming about? And this guy asked me that, and I had one answer, but I'd love to hear yours.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think back to the World War II generation, the greatest generation, and everything they had to deal with in that moment. They were just coming out of the Great Depression. We had just been, we just had, war declared on us by Japan and Germany. Things felt very existential on a daily basis. And they too had to worry about 37 different things occurring. Now, they did have a strong sense of national unity at that time, no doubt. But, people throughout American history have had periods where it felt like everything was coming from so many different directions and they had to deal with it on a daily basis. I don't think we have an excuse in this moment to not understand that we're going to have, a number of years where we're dealing with 37 different things every day and every week.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got to step up and get it done.
That's a better answer than I gave.
What was your answer?
I don't care what Democrats are yelling about as long as they keep yelling and don't be silent.
That
was my answer. It's like, you know what? Get out there, make a fuss, talk to people every day. Doesn't matter. They're full of crimes, these other guys. We need everybody to know it. And then, you know what? We need to do it in large groups so people can see that we are about building the community that we want for this country going forward.
That's right. And we need to have grace with each other.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about who you support in different primaries or whatever. I'm talking about those of us outside of elected office. The hundreds of millions of Americans, literally hundreds of millions of Americans in this country, who are the majority, who can see that this nonsense should not be tolerated. We need to have grace with each other and build community and build bridges between differing perspectives. We're not going to get anywhere by having litmus tests on who can stand beside us when we're fighting against fascism. And, if there is someone I disagree with on one issue, as long as they're standing beside me against fascism, that's what matters to me.
Yep. And Saturday, you and I will be standing in giant crowds where, you know what? Most of the people around us, we're not going to agree about lots of things. Doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah. And we'll have fun together.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another part of this. We got to be joyful.
Yeah. I think this time we are. For a long time, I always thought Republicans had more fun than Democrats. We were kind of sour, because we focused on our policies and they just wanted to have fun. I think that's over. I think I've been to so many of these, not just No Kings, but all these other rallies, and they are joyful from top to bottom. People are happy warriors on this fight because they know what they're fighting for. It's something they love.
That's right. That's right. And I think the momentum is firmly behind us right now.
Yeah.
I really do.
Oh, well, I'm so glad we caught up. It's been too long. And will you tell everybody how to find your work and how to follow you? Because they should.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Of course, I write a blog called Charlotte's Lab Thoughts on politics, religion, foreign policy, and culture. Folks can follow me on Substack. It's charlotteclimber.substack.com. I'm on all the social media platforms. So Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever. People should follow me. But also, Edwin, I just really appreciate that you have been such a strong and consistent voice of reason throughout all this. I know it's been a really tough year for all of us, and we need folks like you who are offering a strong, reasonable alternative voice to the cowardice of legacy media who are rolling over for this administration.
Yeah, I was thinking we should have a funeral for CBS News. Yeah.
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 Maybe we literally should, though.
Maybe we literally should. Yeah.
Maybe we should have an actual casket we bring out to one of these protests that has journalism integrity painted on the side of it.
Well, I think there's still journalism integrity, but it's not in the places it used to be.
No, it's not. It's
Americans
we are
can
no
find the
longer
truth.
in the world of Walter Cronkite.
Yeah. And you know what? That's okay with me. I mean, Walter Cronkite was great and America trusted him, but a lot of Americans' stories never got told. We're in a different world. And I think the truth is there for people who want to find it. It's, of course, surrounded, but what is it? A bodyguard of lies, which is, the right-wing media.
Yes.
But we can get to it. And you and I and hundreds and hundreds of others are going to push it out there.
Yes, sir. That's right.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. I look forward to our next chat. Have fun during the rally.
Yes, sir. Sounds great.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Jonathan Jackson represents the people of Illinois' 1st Congressional District. In a time of, rising bellicosity from our president, he sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Out of government, he's the national spokesman for the Rainbow Push Coalition. Jonathan and I are friends, and we go way back. And I have never seen him walk away from a fight for justice. And I know what it's like to fight beside him. Stuff gets done. That's what we need right now. Jonathan, welcome.
Welcome. Great to hear your voice, Edwin. Keep up the great work, my friend.
I am so glad we're talking, and particularly at this moment. Now, we're recording it before the weekend. Saturday is, of course, No King's Day. Do you expect a big turnout?
Oh, absolutely. I will be in attendance, and I look forward to encouraging everyone to come out. And I think people are just fed up. They're sick of the level of bestiality, hostility that this administration is giving, snatching women and children off of street corners, putting zip ties, kicking in citizens' doors. This has gone far beyond looking for felons that the president has said he was looking for that were here unlawfully. Now citizens are getting ensnarled and wrapped up in this. Innocent people, our children should not have to smell tear gas in the United States of America.
Yeah, it's appalling what he's doing and what he's doing all over our city. But there's some of this activities in your district, too.
Absolutely. Well, what we saw was in Robin Kelly's district on 75th and South Shore when the military helicopters came in. And let people be clear, these are the same military helicopters that are used in Afghanistan and war-torn areas that the United States has been involved in military conflicts. When the president came before the United States military leadership and told them, and by the way, he used the military as a backdrop or prop, he and Secretary Hegseth, whom I've asked for to resign just out of honor and duty to his country, he kicked in the doors and used the military equipment on United States citizens. It's against the law. It's the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act. You're not supposed to put U.S. soldiers on American soil to fight its own citizens. So now there's a battle, or the lines have been blurred between what is the civilian society, what is the military society. And to see children that were zip-tied, people that were separated on race, 36 or 37 people were detained or had their doors kicked in. And I think there was one arrest for a person that had a previous record. It was all a charade. It was messaging he was sending out to the rest of the country. And he's gone by with his ICE raids, picking up people randomly in the 1st district, in the 7th district, and districts throughout the state.
Yeah. I mean, Jonathan, what the lawlessness and the recklessness and the provocations from ICE in Chicago are disgusting. The people of Chicago, though, in every neighborhood have rallied peaceably, have held them to account, have documented their atrocities here. And I am hopeful that the rest of the country will see what's going on here, and this will be that phony emperor's Waterloo.
I hope so. I went by the building on 75th and South Shore.
Yeah.
And besides not seeing any children around, and the children now with a level of fear, it was an 80-degree day when I went over there last, about 2 days subsequent to the raid. And the beach before, which is across the street, little half a beach, 700-800 people out on the beach. The following day, 2 days later, when it was 80 degrees, there were fewer than 8 people out on the beach. So fear is setting in. And one gentleman came up to me. He said, Congressman, I couldn't talk the other day. My PTSD was triggered. He said, this was Desert Storm to me all over again. The boom, bomb, grenade, bombs, tear gas, and the helicopters. I'm just now able to talk. And my heart went out for that soldier. Of course, there are 22 soldiers a day that are dying by way of suicide. They're triggering soldiers on our own soil. So I'm praying for the National Guardsmen, praying for our soldiers, of course, the families, mothers and children. But it's becoming increasingly more dangerous because there are trained former service members that can be traumatized seeing this level of militarization in their city and in their neighborhood while their doors get kicked in.
Yeah, and we have a lawless president, and you have a Justice Department that refuses to hold them to account, that's completely complicit.
And of course, things could have been done different. The Pam Bondi and others should never have been sworn in. The Democrats could have brought that fight on early. This is really the execution, the full manifestation of Project 2025. They're following that doctrine to the letter of the law, all the way up to the Voting Rights Act being challenged.
So let's talk about that. I mean, this Supreme Court says, hey, it's okay to racially profile if you're ICE. If you think somebody looks foreign, it's okay to detain them. And now they're saying, oh, but we're beyond racism in America. That doesn't exist. So let's get rid of the Voting Rights Act.
Oh, Edwin, this is going in such a wrong direction so fast. The United States Supreme Court and the Project 2025 and Trump administration are trying to build upon what was wrongly decided in Students for Fair Admissions in 2023, I believe in June. And that simply says you cannot have racial consideration for the nation's oldest private university, Harvard, founded 1636, and the nation's oldest public university, University of North Carolina, founded 1789. But also in that brief were amicus briefs from the United States military, the military academies for Air Force, Marines, Naval, Air Force. They said they need diversity. They need affirmative action. Colin Powell was an affirmative action candidate because it helps with troop cohesion. When you have a composite nation of many people that come from many parts of the world, many regions of the society, you have to bring them all together. And you do that by showing their commonality, showing their struggles, showing what they have in common, not what they have in difference. This Secretary of Defense that he wants to unilaterally call the Secretary of War, which it's not, that's the purview and the power of the Congress, is creating division. He's the most divisive person I think I've ever seen in public office. Fast forward to the Voting Rights Act, when they say you cannot have racial consideration in the drawing of these state maps. That has to deal with whose voices are included versus whose are excluded. It's just not about a line on a map. It's about whose voice can be represented. I served the 1st District of the state of Illinois. There have been fewer than 150 African Americans to ever have a voting card out of 12,500 and almost 60 representatives in American history since 1789. Fewer than 150. If this Voting Rights Act is wrongly decided. The maps that are shown that where the Republicans have a supermajority in the Deep South, in Louisiana, in Alabama, in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Florida, you're talking about potentially 19 African-American districts being wiped out, being removed. This will have generational conflicts and doesn't stop with the congressional maps. That's just for federal legislators. Then they'll start suing at the state level. That has to do with state senators, state reps, county officials, automatic. It's a C title wave that's going to knock out generations that we would have to fight to get back. The Voting Rights Act has only been implemented for 60 years. I'm 59 years old. The first generation of African Americans that was born with equal rights.
Yeah, and they want to take it away, Jonathan. They want this to. Are you still there? I think I may have lost you.
I'm here. Okay.
Yeah, they want to make it look like 1960. They want every representative to be look just like them. The old Jim Crow said people couldn't vote. They've learned some things. The new Jim Crow or Donald Crow, Trump Crow, is that people can vote, but their votes won't count because of the map making.
That's the whole story, and it's just that simple. It's not any more complicated. They want what they can't win in a free and fair election with voter registration, maximizing voter participation. They try to take it not to the ballot box. They try to take it to the machine count, to the gerrymandered lines. They want to do everything but maximize full representation. And this is the echo. This is the holler. This is the whisper of make it great again, which should beg the question in everyone's mind: when was it better than it is today?
Right. Answer 2 years ago. So look.
I don't think that's what they mean.
No, it's not what they mean.
Years ago, 100 years ago,
it wasn't better. I mean, what we need to do, I think, look, they're trying to wipe out any power that anybody who isn't white has to get elected. But at the same time, they're trying to wipe out any of the power that working men and women, no matter what they look like, have in this country with their giveaways and their grift and their, we have to form this coalition, and you have done this, you understand this, of working people, no matter what they look like, together to save this. And it's the same fight, the fight for civil rights and the fight for workers. I think that's the rainbow in the Rainbow Coalition.
And it's economic justice. And I also serve on the House Foreign Affairs and the Ag Committee. And what's happening in the ag market really deserves to be broadcast in the urban market. If you look at the Illinois Farm Bureau, they have reach across the state, except for in the city of Chicago. More people would care about the farming community in the city if they knew about it. They need to structurally change that so we have access to the Farm Bureau channel. When we see what the president has done in a disastrous trade policy with his big, beautiful bill and his tariffs that he says on April 2nd of 2025 will create a day of liberation. But what did he do? He put up trade restrictions of our products going into China, essentially because he outpriced us from going into China. China can now buy soybeans cheaper from Brazil, which is further away to get to China than the United States. He can buy
Argentina,
soybeans
which
from
is bailing
Argentina to the tune of the first $20 billion. They're going to need another $20 billion. That's going to be $40 billion. And he's going to have to come with a first check of almost $50 billion to help stop the bankruptcy of U.S. farmers. He is killing our domestic farm industry. These are the people, farmers should be a part of our coalition. When I first got on the Ag Committee, someone asked me, Mr. Jackson, you're in the city of Chicago. Why do you want to be on the Ag Committee? And I looked at them and I said, everybody eats. Like, what do you mean? Why do I want to be on the farm?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so we've got to make sure that we bring farmers into the coalition.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, on this show, before you came on, I interviewed Rita Hart, who's the chair of the Iowa Democrats, and we had similar conversation. It's harvest time, right? And these farmers are working hard. They are spending long hours to bring in the crops. They're bringing them in, and they don't know where they're going to sell them because these guys are closing their markets. And by the way, if they get sick, their hospitals are closing too because of what they're doing with healthcare. So they absolutely belong in this coalition with us.
And let's agree that the president, and I know you said it, let's make it real slow. The president shut the farmers out of the Chinese market.
Absolutely.
The Chinese have not retaliated. The president put up these tariffs that make it cheaper for the Chinese to buy in other parts of the world. If I could take 2 steps back on that day of April 2nd, when he said this is going to be a day of liberation, what did he do? He told 95.5% of the world, trade with yourself, because America is only 4.5% of the world's population. He told 82% of the world economy, trade amongst yourself, because we're only 18% of the world's population. Everybody knows that tariff list was AI generated and made no sense. And people don't necessarily have the time, because they actually have work to do and a life to live, to deal with this level of distraction. But that was all act into that problem that we're living with now. So the world is trading amongst themselves and without us. And at the same time, we give Argentina $20 billion without any congressional approval, just because those are Bessett's friends that had hedge funds in there. At the same time, now we've got the Argentinians dropped their tariffs with China and then sold their soybeans after we gave them a bailout, and our farmers are stuck with their own product.
Yeah, and I think the bailout's probably illegal, but again, that we don't have a Justice Department to stop it. Same thing with the paying the military when there's no budget for it. He's taking money from something else, which he really is not allowed to do. And I'm sure if Mike Johnson would ask you guys to go back to work as opposed to keeping you from work, you guys would vote to pay the military. That's not controversial. But instead, he's going to try and steal money that isn't his to steal in order to do it.
It won't stop, and the long-term damage that he's already done is going to take us just to unwind. People are looking at America as a model.
Congressman, you got to walk closer to the phone or something. I'm having trouble hearing you again.
Now people are going to end up that we're going to have to repair the damage that he's done from all these trade ships. Our allies moved on to people that are more reliable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame them either. Okay, what can we do about the Speaker of the House, who seems determined to pay you guys not to work? I know the Democrats are ready to work.
I have been with the other employees. I am not accepting any pay until all of our employees can be paid. I think it's a responsible thing that you should do. And I also respect those that can't do it. They have to accept their check. But we all have to be in this together. And you can also see some structural flaws. We've been asked to, as a shutdown, and this makes no sense to me, ask our employees that they say are non-essential. Everybody in my office is essential in dealing with field work for constituents. And just the other day, I tried to log in someone's report, a veteran that needed help. And on the veteran's website, it says Democrats have the government locked down, and they're also telling us not to send in any more inquiries to help with our veterans. I saw that same thing with the State Department website. So people that have visa issues, they're not being able to get service as well. And so this isn't like starting a car putting the key in the ignition. When people cannot get paid, they have to find other work to do. They'll take that skill and they will move on.
Yep.
And you'll have less talent coming back because you have to reproduce it, create it over time. So they're intentionally strangling the economy.
Yeah, it makes. I mean, the America is so much worse off in just the 8-9 months this man's been in office, and between the tariffs and the government shutdown, he inherited like the greatest economy the world's ever known. He's shredding it. He inherited a country that had made enormous progress in healthcare, in education, in civil and human rights, and he's shredding it. I mean, I can't think of one area where this administration has made the world better. He certainly didn't bring peace on day one and around the world. And when you go back there, you're going to sit on a committee.
Made the nation meaner. I mean, and you like, I
can't wait for you to get to the bottom of why he's blowing up these boats in the Caribbean.
Well, and there was on the latest boat that was attacked with is against our laws, and he's also doing some covert operation with the CIA, they've said, regarding going into Venezuela if he's trying to topple governments now. It's a disaster. So from Caracas, Venezuela to the city of Chicago, I think the number is like almost 2,000 plus miles. It's certainly under 3,000. Yeah. People have to understand this is a contiguous landmass. You can walk from Caracas, Venezuela to Chicago. You can bicycle. You can drive. Yeah. It's a contiguous landmass. And when the United States has tried to give the Venezuelan economy 3 Great Depressions in the last 20 years, so there's a reason 7 million people have had to flee Venezuela. We need to normalize ties in our region, and people would not come here. People don't leave their home with a shirt on their back with children's that don't speak the language without any money because they want to. They've had to leave, and that's what will only further increase migration in our region.
Yeah, and we've shown that we are just so incredibly incapable of dealing with immigration and migration. We send our guns to these countries, we destroy their economies, and then we say to the people who live there, that's on you, buddy. Don't come talking to us. It's just cruel and stupid. Yeah. And there are better ways of doing this.
Think about what happened with Mexico, for example, and I'll tell you another story after this one, is there is one gun shop in the country of Mexico, and it's owned by the Mexican government, and it services their military. Mm-hmm. There are 3,500 gun shops on the Mexican-U.S. borders where U.S. manufacturers sell guns into the cartels into Mexico. The other story I want to share with you. So the gun problem in Mexico and the gangs in Mexico are a function of the guns being sold from the Americans over there. I was leaving Washington Reagan Airport yesterday, and when I stopped by the little gift shop stand, and I started seeing all these hats. I've seen them, but now they continue to proliferate. They used to just be a symbol, United States of America and the president's cap. Now they're selling Trump 47 hats. They're selling NSA hats. They're selling ICE hats, as if that's something fashionable and cool to have an ICE hat on. They're selling Charlie Kirk freedom paraphernalia, as if the things that Charlie Kirk said were like honorable. It's setting a bad tone.
Oh, you're much more polite than I am. They're way past setting a bad tone. They are driving this country into the worst possible place. In fact, they do not want to share a country with you and me, Jonathan, and I don't know how we repair that. I mean, they lost the Civil War trying to separate, but now they're really saying we have power. We do not want to share a country with you. You either become like us or find some other place, and that's not okay. That's not how a great nation behaves.
And hate at the end loses. It consumes itself. And you're beginning to see that when you see these pictures online of zip tying people. You see a man walking through a street with a Nazi uniform on. You're seeing people, a senator talking about this as my country. You're talking about the great replacement theory, all the fear. And so we can expect this to devolve some more. But I'm excited because
did you see what those young Republicans did?
Rally.
Hang on, before we get to
the hate group chat.
The hate group chat of the young Republicans? And, you know, and J.D. Vance is saying, oh, well, we can forgive them. They're just young people, right? But like J.D. Vance is the first person. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can we agree that they're not young people? Some of those persons are 40 years old.
I'm sorry. I'm just so old. Everybody seems young. Yeah, but they should know better. Exactly. They're old enough to know better. Well,
these are congressional staffers.
Yeah.
These are really grown people. This isn't on a college campus at 18, 19, 20 years old.
Right.
These are people that are in the workforce and that work for members of Congress that still have their jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. So they shouldn't have their jobs. I mean, look, when Mike Johnson says about, or anybody those Republicans say about this nice love fest that's going to be no kings, where people are out there and they love America and they're positive about it, and it's a great, big, diverse, looks like America, honors America crowd. When they say, oh, you are haters, you are, you know, pulling people down, we just like point them to their own group chats, right? You want to see haters right there. Look at your own group chats. Not the ones that are giving away military secrets, the other ones.
The other one, right. And J.D. Vance, you remember, he might have gotten in the Senate maybe at 36, 30, 37.
Right.
He became a vice president at like 38 or 39. Yeah. He's 41. These people are 40 years of age that are spewing this hate out, and he wants to reduce them to like children. No, these are hateful people that should be denounced. He said, I don't want to ruin their life and ruin their career. There were students that were having protests that they went down with the full weight of the government and want to put them on lists. I mean, these are people that are working in the government that are really grown, not on a college campus.
Full grown. And they just hate. They hate other Americans. They celebrate. I mean, they were celebrating Hitler. They're celebrating racists. They just are appallingly terrible. I don't know how to say it. They're just terrible people. And they're being, Jonathan, this is the first time in my life there's nobody in the highest levels of the federal government, of our administration, of the administration of the United States government, that you and I can respect. Not one. Not one we can look up to or admire. That's never happened.
You know, we were in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I was talking. Had my 5 minutes to question Secretary Rubio, and on his attack specifically on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because the programs that went for career service professionals for Hispanics, Blacks, minorities, women, all those programs have been eliminated. So basically just targeting white men through the Fulbright, but the Rangel and the Payne scholarships and others that were trying to be more inclusive to reflect our population and the nations, the countries. And so I asked Secretary Rubio after I read these quotes, I said, Secretary Rubio, this quote, pro-diversity, equity, and inclusion was from you as Senator Rubio. Yeah. Now, as Secretary Rubio, you are against it. I said, I hope to see more of Senator Rubio and his spirit and less of Secretary Rubio that's being divisive. I thank you, and I yield back.
That's good. That's very good. I don't think you will see more of it, but it's very good. I mean, look, the other thing that they claim to I've worked in the federal government, you know this, and I've worked in environments in the private sector that are very diverse and some that were less diverse. And the ones that were more diverse were higher performing. That, you know what, when you cast a wider net, you get more talent. These programs aren't about bringing down any standards, they're about lifting standards. and its evidence is 30 years long. We just know that this is not about putting incompetent people to work. It's about finding the most competent people wherever they are. Madness.
Can you imagine this here, that when you think of the gains that have been made with just in the female population, from Sandra Day O'Connor all the way up until today with Ketanji Brown Jackson, in the history of America, just say from the history of the United States Congress, 1789, there have been 116 justices, which is a problem. Mm-hmm. They've only been 6 women. Yeah. There's been 3 blacks.
Yep.
In the entire history. So all the laws that we live off of have been crafted by others. And we say diversity. It was amazing to see in the Supreme Court hearing the other day, the women that were arguing the cases, they were actually making the stronger arguments on why we needed this level. And I just have to write off Justice Clarence Thomas. What an abysmal choice. He has everything wrong with people that smear diversity, equity, inclusion. He was put up there as a farce and a joke, and he's been nothing but mean-spirited. And the person that's benefited the most from these programs is the most hateful towards him. He really is a problem and a liability for the nation.
Yeah, I hope that you get a chance to fix the Supreme Court when we win everything back, but they're going to make it hard. So look, we're running out of time. Congressman, it is great to talk to you. It's great, as always, to talk to you. It's great to talk to you in public like this and have a chance for everybody to hear, where you are on these issues and how hard you're fighting for them. I am, as I said at the beginning, I've never known you not to fight for justice, to walk away from any of those fights. And when you're in them, you get stuff done. So I'm just delighted you're there.
Glad to be on your team, brother Edwin. You keep up the great fight, and look forward to being back with you soon. Dad says hello, man.
Oh, give him my best. Give him my best. Thank you.
I certainly will.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
I'm happy to be joined by Rita Hart. Rita is in her second term as the chairman of the Iowa Democrats. And look, given how under-resourced and how badly shellacked Democrats have been in the last decade in Iowa, this is a rare and very positive sense of continuity and a chance to really make things better, as she already has in the state. I think this re-election to a term where Democrats have not re-elected a chair in a while really speaks, to the plans and the progress she is making in this important state. Look, it's a tough hole to pull the party out of in Iowa, and we're going to talk a little bit about the progress already made and the opportunities ahead. Rita, thank you.
No, thank you, and I want to make sure that that we give credit where credit is due here. This was not a singular effort by a long shot. Going into this in 23, it was clear to me that it was going to take a lot of people making a lot of changes and doing a lot of hard work. And while that it has been challenging, that's the good news, is that so many good folks have stepped up to make the kinds of changes that are pushing us in the right direction here. And so it's a group effort and that is for sure.
On this show, we've talked to lots of Democratic Party chairs, and what strikes me is not one of you can begin a sentence with "I." It's not one. It's all about the just building an effort of a lot of people and giving praise and thanks to all the people who show up and make stuff happen.
Well, that's the only way it works, right? Is if people do this together. Yeah. And they deserve the credit, right? Because that's what keeps the movement going, right? Is recognizing how many people it takes to do this kind of work.
We're in an era where I guess our politics can be described as organized money versus organized people. And, and they got the money and they're organized about how they use it. And we are showing them including in No Kings. I mean, well, just to be clear to everybody, I'm recording this not during our normal Saturday time, but a little bit early so that we can all be out at No Kings, right? And that's organized people, and it's making a difference that way.
Correct. And I think that the other thing that is clear here is that money is too big a deal in politics, right? That in order to be competitive, in order to get people elected, we have to play that money game too. And that is, a huge problem with politics right now, that there's too much money in it, and that discourages folks, that they recognize that we've got to get the money out of politics if people are really going to be heard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can thank John Roberts for that. But look, you've had Republican leadership in Iowa for a long time now, and Republicans are in charge in D.C. So how's Iowa doing economically?
It is not a good story. And I think that that's another reason why people are invigorated here in the state of Iowa, because they are not happy with the fact that we are 49th in economic growth in comparison to the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm.
We're 48th in personal income growth.
Mm.
That the state legislature, again, the Republicans have been in total control for nearly 10 years now, and they have made some big changes, which have not been good for healthcare, not been good for education, not been good for our economic vitality. And so as we look at the fact that our schools have slid down to the midpoint, if not lower,
Right.
when that is such a value for Iowans and such an economic driver, right? I mean, this is a value that Iowans have had for a long time, and they were very proud of being number one, being number one or number two in the nation as far as education outputs are concerned, and to be to watch that education fall down and not be a help to us in attracting people to the state and keeping and retaining people in the state. That's a huge problem. And then you add to that the fact that that these state legislators have been in charge, and yet and they've been telling us that they are making these great economic decisions. At the same time, this last budget year, they were not able to balance the budget unless they dipped into the savings accounts by almost $1 billion. This is not boding well for the future here. And
No.
so, yeah, people are not happy, and that has motivated a lot of Iowans to get more involved.
Yeah, good. And I look, as we speak, it's harvest time. People are out bringing in the crops. That is an enormous effort. Farmers are working long hours, and like rural America is no stranger to hard work. So how do these hardworking people hear it when they hear the government's shut down, but the Republicans are on vacation?
I think that's a basic value, and I'm glad you brought up the farming aspect. Because Paul and my husband and I are farmers, and we were out in the field till I don't know what time last night.
My wife is out in the combine as we speak with her cousin downstate in Illinois. Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we've got nothing to complain about this year as far as that hard work is concerned. It's been great weather. We've been lucky. We had a couple breakdowns, but nothing unusual. And and we're going to get done early this year. But we know the pressures that are on farmers today with low prices of both corn and soybeans, and this knowledge that we have that the markets are being irreversibly affected by the tariffs, right?
Right.
And so it makes people very nervous, and it's beyond our control. So that's when as farmers, you work hard just like everybody else does, right?
Yeah.
And you concentrate on the things that you have control over, but it's very frustrating. And so, yeah, again, it's a situation where we send these folks as our representatives to DC to do that hard work for us. And when they don't go and do it, and instead throw up their hands and blame everybody else and don't get the job done, that doesn't sit well. It doesn't sit well with me. I'm
Well,
sure it doesn't sit well with you or your wife. And it
no, I
doesn't
mean,
sit well
they're
with
on paid vacation right now while the government's shut down. Mike Johnson said, take the money and don't show up.
unacceptable, right?
Unacceptable.
Yeah. And even if, some of them do, not take the paycheck, right? Knowing that they're going to get it back eventually and they can afford to do that. That smacks of elitism to me,
Yep, yep,
right?
yep.
Most people cannot afford to say, oh, that's okay. I won't take my paycheck this week and next week because I know I'll get paid back. No, they've got to pay their bills on a weekly basis. So yeah, it's again, I think people need to be reminded of who's in charge here. The Republicans have total control, and
Do
it's
people
up to them.
really need a reminder of that? I mean, they're out bragging about it every day. In my city, they're sending their troops to try and tell us they're in control every day. And there's no confusion about who's in charge and the damage they're doing here. But look, the things we've just talked about, the damage that Republicans have done to the economy in Iowa, the transgression to the values, like show up, hard work, teach the kids, these all present opportunities for Democrats, right? So let's turn to how you're going to take advantage of those opportunities. I mean, let me just say one more thing. Unless Republicans are completely distracted by the daily moral panic that they're peddling. Oh, it's Antifa. Oh, there's a gay kid around the corner. Oh, it's I don't know, Pizzagate, whatever it is they make up to keep people distracted. But real life intervenes, and now it's harder for farmers to find markets, certainly for soybeans, and maybe prices come down for corn too. I don't know. It's certainly tougher on people in cities and any parents who want to make sure their kids get a good education. It's kind of harder to distract everybody with this fantasy nonsense. So how do you organize to win in Iowa?
So that's the great word, right? It's about organization. And as you've noticed, and I'm sure many of your listeners know that here in Iowa, we've had several special elections since 24 that we've been able to overperform by more than 25 points, and we've been able to flip 2 seats in the state house and one in the state senate. I guess both in the state senate. We've been able to flip them from red to blue, and that is because we've done a couple things that I just think are basic, what most people want from the political world. They want to be able to vote for a candidate that they can trust, that has a record of working for other people, not just for themselves, that's not in it just for themselves, but understands what public service is all about and has a belief that if they do their job, that others' lives will be better as well, right? That's the kind of candidates we've been running in all of these special elections, and the voters have recognized that and rewarded us for it. But it doesn't happen magically, especially in an environment like we have here in Iowa, where Republicans have been winning in several cycles, right?
Yeah.
We got to organize. We got to put people to work. We've got to get people to understand who Democrats are, what they stand for, and that they are working for the working class. They are working for the middle class. They are working for people who go to work every day and need those paychecks every week.
Yep.
These are the people that these candidates are going to be really working hard for. And so it's not just about the candidates. And I think that's what people have to understand, is that that's my job as a state party chair, is to make sure that we do have the organization that puts people to work in an effective way that helps great candidates actually get across the finish line.
That's terrific, Rita. Are you able to field candidates for all the elections in the state? Have we found Democrats who will run in every district?
We're working hard at that recruitment effort. and by we, I mean, I mean, everybody has a
Yeah, yeah,
responsibility
yep,
here to seek out the people that would be best suited for these jobs. And so I'm very, very tickled that we have such a strong group of people that are already out there working hard
yep,
and
yep.
campaigning. We're gonna have primaries in all four of the congressional districts. We've got a real shot at the governorship in this state. We've got, surprisingly enough, we've got a very robust set of candidates that are going to be working hard to get the U.S. Senate seat turned blue. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, things are going.
I
We're
mean,
working hard on that
you
recruitment effort.
Democrats will never win if we don't ask people for their votes. So we have to be a campaigning everywhere. I mean, and sometimes, particularly in like the uphill fights in some of your legislative districts, you won't win the first time or the second time, but being out there asking people for their votes, countering the lies when they get told, saying, oh, no, that's not right, just getting a different voice out there over time, it makes such a difference. I look at your neighbor, Wisconsin, and how they have broken the gerrymander and are moving, in the right direction. And like Iowa, the outcomes in people's lives. I mean, Wisconsin and Minnesota are practically the same state for a lot of reasons, economic reasons. And when Wisconsin went solidly Republican, all of those measures about people's lives got worse. The outcomes when Republicans lead states and the outcomes when Democrats lead states are different for the people in those states. Your neighbor, Wisconsin and Minnesota, are very similar states economically, and yet in the years that Scott Walker and the Republicans ran Wisconsin, you have a real live example of those two states where private investment went up in Minnesota more than it did in Wisconsin, where measures of educational success went up in Minnesota far more than in Wisconsin, where public health measures went up in Minnesota and they didn't in Wisconsin. So you have examples that when Democrats lead, people do better. Real examples, and this has nothing to do with, you don't have to argue about any policy. You just look at people's lives. The measures of their lives are better. And there, of course, you and I know there are policy reasons for this, but for the public's benefit, their just lives are better. And they have more opportunities, and their kids have more opportunities. And here in Iowa, as you explained, Republican leadership has foreclosed those opportunities for kids, has polluted the water, has put children to work in factories at night, has done all kinds of things that just sort of are repellent to people's moral sense, and their lives aren't better. So you're out there organizing the good people of Iowa to go and tell that story and to find candidates who will deliver for people. That's fabulous. That's got to be, rewarding work.
Yeah, it certainly gives you a lot of purpose. And I would tell you that that's, what you just described is all comes from values, right? That the Democrats want people's lives to be better across the board, not just rich people, not just people who for some reason people think deserve to have certain things. That's why we believe in healthcare for everyone, right? That's why we believe that people are, when they're working full time, they ought to be making enough money to not only just survive, but to have their families thrive.
Yep.
I mean, those are basic values that cause us to work on those aspects of the policy that are going to lift all boats. That's the bottom line.
So you have an open Senate seat in a Senate race. Joni Ernst, I think, couldn't run again after she gave up her career in order to make Pete Hegseth the Secretary of Defense. It's still called Defense, no matter what the president says. But offense is a better description for everything they're doing, for sure. It's so offensive. So she cast that vote knowing better. She cast that vote saying, you have our back on women in the military. And then he promptly is purging women from every leadership spot in the military and making it harder for them to serve. She did that either because she's a fool or she did it knowingly and lied to people, but that now she can't run again in part because of that.
In part.
In part, right?
In part, yeah.
In part. So what does the field look like, and how? And this is an interesting year. We might win that seat.
It's totally different than what I expected, right? I just didn't expect her to implode quite the way she did.
Yep.
But I think part of that is, again, when President Trump came in January and did this shock and awe kind of approach, people got very upset here. They were angry, they were scared, they were very motivated. And so we had all kinds of Iowans showing up, questioning what was going on, questioning her, asking for more town halls, questioning why she was doing just exactly what you were saying. And I would say that, again, her priorities are different than ours. She's more interested in the power and the special interests than she is in average Iowans, right? And that's when an average Iowan yelled at her at a town hall and caused her to, say something that went viral, right? That we all got to die.
We all got to die.
And now that really hurt her, I think. But I think she could have survived that. But when she doubled down with that video in the cemetery, that revealed a value and a nature that is so dismissive of the human beings that she's supposed to represent. And so as a result, it got a lot of people riled up. And not only are they showing up and speaking up and standing up, they are running for office. Yeah. And so now we have 6 people, 6 good candidates running for that Senate seat. They are working hard. I travel all across the state. They are right there with me. They are going everywhere. And they're talking to folks and listening to folks about the frustrations that they have when it comes to the policies that are in place now, and this big, ugly, lousy law that they passed that's going to make it harder for people who live in rural areas to get health care, for farmers to be able to continue to afford their health insurance, because that Affordable Care Act is the subsidies are no longer going to be there. So these are issues that we are speaking to that the Republicans have abandoned, and it's caused us to have a great opportunity to pick up that seat.
Rita, I think primaries are so important. And one of the reasons why, in my view, one of the reasons why we did not succeed in this very close presidential election that we just lost was that we didn't have the time to do a primary, to take the attention, after all, away from Donald Trump and onto Democrats, so that we could be out there talking to people, not one candidate, but 5 or 6, spreading a message of shared values, and also learning from people about their lives, what works, what doesn't work.
What's happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, primaries are very important mechanisms for building our party, and we lost out on that in the presidential. So the fact that you have a lot of candidates all over that state, that counters Fox News. People. You're in a room with somebody, it matters a whole lot more than what you see on cable news.
And it's again, it's not rocket science to recognize that most people are not very political as far as being involved, and they lead their lives. They've got their own priorities, right? But they are good citizens, especially here in Iowa. We believe in our right to vote, and we exercise it, right? And we have a long history of being very involved in the vetting process of presidents. And so people have a heightened sense of their responsibility there and their ability, right, to get to really understand and get to know these candidates. And that trickles down all the way down to their local school board and the local library board, et cetera, right? And so this is an opportunity for us to listen to those folks and find out what life is like for each and every person. What challenges are they facing, and what are the solutions therein? And that's what I think is exciting about our candidates, because they come from various backgrounds, and they've got strengths in those backgrounds, and they are the kind of people that if they don't know something, they're going to listen, try to find out more, and they're going to take that responsibility to take that issue and try to find a solution for it.
Do all of these candidates understand that their opponent it is the Republican Party as it exists today, and the people there, or are they spending their time beating each other up?
No, I would tell you that their priorities are talking about what the situation is on the ground right now here in Iowa. And
I love that.
It's clear that there are so many issues that are really important to Iowans. The fact that we are not growing in population, that people are struggling to make ends meet, that the prices are getting higher and higher at the grocery stores, that we know that, again, as a result of this law that was just passed, our electricity bills are going to go higher. And that solar and wind energy are just got a huge hit, which has not only been great for us in the state of Iowa to keep our energy costs low, but it's been such a driver for employment and for making this state an affordable place to live, which attracts more people of all stripes, right? So again, we know. I think as Democrats, we know that we've got to have candidates that appeal to Democrats, but also to independents and to reasonable Republicans, because we're talking about the issues that really matter to folks.
Yeah, and now you're talking to them where they live. You're actually out there everywhere and having that conversation. It just matters so much. Hey, I'm a little familiar. I mean, I'm only across the border here in Illinois, and in my life, there have been presidential campaigns that have drawn me to your state, in that crazy thing you call caucuses. But from Illinois, in the last few years, there's been an enormous number of people in Chicago who say, oh, there's not much we can do to help Democrats here. So they spent a lot of time campaigning in Wisconsin. What can people in your big neighbor over here do to help you in Iowa?
I think that is the same thing that we have put to play with these special elections, right? That, these special elections happen in a very small area of the state, but everybody can help, right? I mean, by making phone calls from no matter where you live, by writing a postcard, by sending money, by encouraging these candidates, because it is hard to run. It takes a lot to put your name on the ballot these days, and they need all the encouragement that they can get. But we also need to get out there and knock on doors. And so, not everybody can do everything, right? Everybody needs to know what they're capable of, what they have time to do, and what suits them for their skill set, their talent set, right? But there is something that everyone can do when they truly believe that this is important, and it's important for them to get involved. Yeah.
Can they go to the Iowa Democratic Party site and find out the opportunities?
Sure. Go to iowademocrats.org. And there's a way to sign up there to volunteer. There's a way to sign up to donate, of course, and a way to just engage with us, because it's really important that people understand what's at stake here and how we can't turn this stuff around.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me ask you, and you can tell me if I'm going a place you don't want to go, right? But you're working, you got a farm, you're doing your work, and something happens and says, I really want to raise my hand for the most thankless job in America, being a state party chair where the Democrats are underfunded and we haven't won in a while. What happened? Because you seem normal and sane, right? What happened that made you say, I have to do this?
Well, several things happened. And first, I would tell you that I ran for Congress here, right?
Yep.
In 2020.
I know that. Yeah.
And it was the closest race in all of U.S. House history.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found out through that process, I mean, that was a tricky time. It was the time of the insurrection. It was COVID. That was a tough race for so many reasons, on top of the fact that it was just so darn close, right? But what I found out there was that the Democratic Party was not as strong as the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And so Marionette Miller Meeks in that race had a lot more underpinnings to her campaign, and we had to scrabble that much harder to get the same things done. So I knew that was a problem. Now, after the election, I had to take some time to lick my wounds and to take care of my family. Lots of things happening there. But then 2022 comes along, and we have another bad election, right? Another disappointing election. And so I started asking questions, because I want this to turn around. I want to know, what are we doing that we could do differently and get better results, right? So I started asking some questions. I didn't get too many answers to my questions. What I got instead was a lot of people saying, yeah, that's a good question. You ought to run for chair. You ought to do this, right? And people, lots of people really kind of ambushed me on that, and really, really worked hard on that. Which, still, I was not looking for this job. And to your points of all the things you said, there's a lot of reasons to not take the job. But I have a responsibility here to my children and my grandchildren. I want Iowa to be a better place. I want it to be more welcoming. I want it to be more successful. And I want the nation to be more successful, right? So I'm always listening to that inner ear, right? But what I also heard was a lot of people saying, Rita, if you will step up and do this, I will do this part. I will help you in this regard. So a lot of people were willing to step up. And when I go around and talk to folks and have these conversations, that's one of my lines, is that I say, when I after 2022, we were all pretty depressed. You remember how you felt that way? But very few people thought, you know what, I need to run for state party chair. Right. Nobody did that. Yeah, right? Yeah. And I knew that this was going to be a really hard job, that it was going to be a lot of hours, that there was going to be things that I would not be able to predict, but that were going to come up and be barriers and be problems. And the end result of that is that I was not disappointed. Yeah, it was a really hard job. But it's very satisfying to take something from that point and try to make something good out of it. And working with all these people who also have that notion, who know that we can do better and are determined to get there, that's very gratifying.
Yeah. So I love what you're doing. I mean, and I think about my friend Ben Wickler, what he did when he was chair above you, but Anderson Clayton, what she's doing in North Carolina. There's a great group of Dem chairs out there, to work together to share best practices. And in my life, I grew up in Illinois, where we have a different kind of Democratic Party. We have an old school Democratic Party that all the great Democrats I know always run against, because it was organized as the party of political leadership and industry. It was a lobbying organization in some ways, right? And my former state Speaker of the House reported to jail 2 days ago, powerful guy, right? So we've had a different kind we have great candidates, don't get me wrong. We have great candidates, and we have had, I'm proud of my governor. I'm proud of a lot of things that Illinois is doing, but we don't have a bottom-up Democratic Party here. That's not what we've had. But I see it happening in states like yours. I see it happening in North Carolina. It happened in Wisconsin. And that is the kind of energy that's transformative of politics itself, but it's also, it builds a sense of community. Like, you get people together and they go knock on doors and I don't know, I'll bet you there's none of the campaigns you have where young people don't fall in love and get married on a campaign, right? Where people just don't say, wow, I didn't know I'm the only one who feels this way. And suddenly you build a stronger community, build a stronger town. It's not just about the elections, it's about the society you live in. And it's fabulous what you're doing.
Well, that is the fun of it, right? Is that, there's a fever around this kind of politics, right? And you catch the fever. And, and that's, one of the first phone calls I made when I took this job was to Ben Wickler.
Yeah.
Tell me where I go from here. And Anderson Clayton came to Iowa shortly after I started. And yes, that's.
Oh my God, I'd give anything to see the two of you out campaigning together. That would be so much fun.
Anderson she has so much energy. Oh my gosh. So, but yeah, and that's infectious, right? But the bottom line is people want to be able to trust. They don't want it. They want to live their lives. They want somebody that they trust to be taking care of the governmental things that do affect their lives. And I don't think there's a lot of trust out there. And that's why most polls will tell you that people don't have any faith in either party. And a lot of that is, where they're getting their information and what kind of information they're receiving, et cetera. So we've got to show them. We can't just tell them because they're getting their stuff from, that we've got to show them. And you show them by showing up, by coming in there and talking and having these conversations. That's it.
Rita, we're just about out of time, and I have not had even a second to talk to you about your governor's race, which also is enormously important. So we'll do this again sometime, if you will. But we'll cover that. But look, I want to end with this. I'm so impressed that Iowa Democrats have decided to. Let's have some stability. Let's let you lead. Let's bring everybody together, because that's how you lead, and build the kind of bottom-up organization that's going to make your state stronger and make the country better. I love that.
You know what my story is that personifies that helps people to visualize what we've got to do. Goes back to the farm, right? I grew up on a farm, dairy farm, hardworking, 8 brothers and sisters. And one of the jobs that we always have to do on the farm that is like this is the job of picking up rocks every year, right? And so I talk about that, about how this job of turning this party around and getting the votes that we need to get Democrats elected is just one task at a time. One rock at a time. And so my dad would line us up on the edge of the field. And I figured out soon that my job, I'm the middle child. I got 4 older and 4 younger. My job is to get the rocks that I can handle the best and get them up on the rack as fast as I can. And we work as a team. And you leave the smaller ones for the smaller kids and the bigger ones for the bigger kids. And you work as a team across that field. And when you get to the end of it, you look back and you see that you've accomplished something. Now, is the job done? Absolutely not. You're not going to get every rock, and there are a whole bunch of them going to come back next spring.
You can never finish picking up rocks.
That's right. It's never done, and that's the way it is with getting people involved in campaigns and winning elections. The work is never done because there's always more to do to help people to have a better life.
Yeah. Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you, Rita, very much. And for all those of you listening, help out in Iowa. Go to the Iowa Dem site, volunteer, spend some money, help them out. It's really important. And, winning back rural America, I think we have a chance for the first time in decades. So let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. We're all in this together. That's right.
Thank you, Rita.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
You're looking at the big picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. It was formed in 1963 at the request of President Kennedy to attract the nation's leading lawyers as agents for change in this new civil rights movement. Robert Weiner is the voting rights director of project director for that group. Earlier in his career, he served as senior counsel to the Civil Rights Division in the U.S. Justice Department. It's almost hard to say that anymore because until this administration decided civil rights were civil wrongs, it was one of the most prestigious respected, important places in our government. Anyway, Rob, welcome.
Thank you.
I have so much I want to talk to you about. I guess my biggest question, particularly since this is civil rights under the law, and I don't want to. I'll tell you it, but then let's get there at the end. Is whether civil rights under law remains a thing in the United States, but we'll get there. Can we start with the Supreme Court and Louisiana versus Calais? I just think people need to know more about it. And if you wouldn't mind just telling people a little bit about it, and then we'll dive into where it sits in the 20-year attack of John Roberts on the Voting Rights Act.
Sure. So in Louisiana, I can't remember the exact number. I think Black people may be a third of the
state. Yeah.
And they had 7 congressional districts, and Black people had 1 majority minority district. And they sued in the Robinson case, and they got a judgment. They got a preliminary injunction that said that this was not compliant with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And so the state was given an opportunity to draw a new map. And they drew a map that gave the Black population 2 majority Black districts, but they drew it in a way that made sure that they kept districts for the Speaker of the House, who's from Louisiana, and I think the majority leader, the majority whip in the House, and some, I think, white plaintiffs then sued and said that this district was racially gerrymandered. And a different 3-judge district court examined that case and said, yes, we think it's unconstitutional because it's racially gerrymandered. And the court took that, and it was argued last term, and then they decided that they would have it re-argued this term, which in and of itself was a subject for concern because a lot of people thought it should be pretty much a cut and dry case. But instead, the court identified the issues that it wanted people to argue, and one of those issues is whether race-conscious remedies for a Section 2 violation are constitutional. And it's a troubling question because when you have a statute that's designed to protect against discrimination targeting minorities, to say that you can't have a racially conscious remedy is to really undercut the effectiveness of the statute very seriously.
Very seriously. I mean, for years, judges and courts have balanced equal representation versus equal protection. They found a way to constitutionally protect Black voters in particular from historically undermining racist maps. And now this court, if it's been cutting the Voting Rights Act for years. I think if this goes the way it might, there's not much left of the Voting Rights Act.
Well, it will be difficult. It's hard to know exactly which lines they're going to draw.
Yeah.
And I suspect that they'll fuzz it up some in the opinion, which has been not unusual for the past few years.
Yeah.
So, but the potential is there for a really harmful opinion. I'm not willing to say that that's how they're going to go because I was convinced back in 2023 when they decided Allen versus Milligan that it was all over for Section 2, and it wasn't. They reaffirmed the principles. So, maybe lightning will strike again.
Well, here's the thing I don't fully understand. I'm not a lawyer, but so you can help me with this. The 15th Amendment of the Constitution is pretty short, right? Basically, it says the rights of citizens in the United States to vote can't be abridged because of race, color, or previous conditions of servitude. But then it says the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. 100 years later, that appropriate legislation was the Civil Rights Act. Yes. I don't understand. I think the Supreme Court is saying, oh, no. The Constitution didn't mean that. The Congress doesn't have that power. We have that power. It feels like the court is saying, nope, Constitution's wrong. It's our power. It's not the legislature's power, because the legislature did its job.
Yeah, and the court held back in the early days of Section 2 that the 15th Amendment gave Congress discretion in how it was going to implement this statute. But they have unrelentingly cut back on the Voting Rights Act. It is not a favored statute in the Supreme Court. They essentially gutted the main provision of it in 2013 in one of the worst decisions, in my view, the court has ever rendered in the Shelby County case. And one of the things they said in that case is, well, you still have Section 2.
Right.
When they did away with Section 5 in that case.
Yeah. So just so everybody's listening knows, Section 5 was pre-clearance, right?
Yes.
Section 5 said the parts of the country that have historically engaged in racist map making need to have any changes cleared before they go into effect. And that's the one, I think, am I right, where Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, you know what, when you're saying that those maps that they have now are fair, that's like saying you're not getting wet when you're standing under an umbrella. And now you're getting rid of the umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah. And the rationale for that case, Chief Justice Roberts wrote it. He said, there's this principle of equal sovereignty of states in the Constitution. And this statute singled out a lot of the states that had a history of discrimination. Mm-hmm. Well, the Constitution doesn't say equal sovereignty. And in fact, as you pointed out, the Voting Rights Act was enacted under the 15th Amendment.
Yeah.
The post-Reconstruction, the post-Civil War amendments were not about equal sovereignty. In fact, they were crammed down the throats of the southern states as the price of re-entering the Union. Yep. Those were about equal treatment under law for minority citizens.
Yep.
Equal sovereignty, if it had a part at all, which I doubt, was very, very subjugated in terms of the importance of the issue.
Well, and we are seeing, this race to gerrymander all over the country. And if they rush this decision through, I suspect the Southern representation in Congress will look more like 1960 than 1980.
Well, it's already started with Texas redistricting and Missouri redistricting, and now North Carolina, Louisiana, depending on how this case goes, Louisiana, Florida, Ohio, Indiana, all these states are trying to redistrict in order to maximize the representation of the Republican Party. And I just don't know when this became okay.
Yes, you do. It was another Supreme Court case where John Roberts said this is non-justiciable, right? They said it's an affront to democracy, but hey, we wash our hands.
But he still said it was an affront to democracy. They recognized that it was a bad thing, and now it's not a bad thing. It's a terrible thing. Some of the questioning suggested that it's a traditional part of redistricting. And, in the Alexander case a couple of terms ago, they emphasized that there's a good faith presumption of good faith by the states. And that means that you have to show that it's not partisanship. Since when did having the representatives pick their constituents rather than vice versa become an attribute of good faith?
It hasn't.
It's boggling to me.
It hasn't. It's incredibly toxic to our democracy. Incredibly toxic. So you also represented the Texas NAACP in their lawsuit about racial gerrymandering. I assume if the Louisiana case it goes adverse, there's nothing left for the Texas case.
No, I think we made a constitutional claim in that case, and so we alleged that there was intentional discrimination that violated the 14th Amendment.
I see. So you're not relying on the Voting Rights Act.
We are not relying on the Voting Rights Act because
you saw what was coming.
Well, and because the Fifth Circuit had done away with coalition claims, which were our Section 2 claims in that case.
Yeah. All right. So talk a little bit, let me change the subject a little, of the changes to the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department that this horrid administration has foisted on the country.
Well, one of the changes is really illustrated well by the Texas case. We just finished trying that case. I got back last Saturday, and that case was started when the Justice Department sent a letter to the governor of Texas, and the letter said there are 4 districts in Texas which are so-called coalition districts, which are where 2 minority groups or more get together and they have a majority. And those are districts that used to be recognized to satisfy Section 2. You had to show that you could be a majority in a district. And the Fifth Circuit said, no, that doesn't apply anymore. In fact, only 3 of the 4 districts were coalition. 1 was majority Hispanic. But the Justice Department said to Texas, you have to do away with these majority minority districts. And then the governor said, well, we'll put this on the agenda for the special session and we'll remove, I think was his word, remove these majority minority districts. And then the legislators echoed that. Well, the guy who drew the maps got on the stand in Texas. He's very proud of himself. He's from the National Republican Redistricting Trust. And he said that he was at the White House in June. And at the White House, he saw a draft of that letter. And they talked about it with the White House and the Justice Department and the governor. This is before the letter goes out. I was at the Justice Department twice. I was at the Justice Department 10 years ago in the Deputy AG's office. I was at the White House 10 years before that. And one thing I know for certain is that the Justice Department did not discuss enforcement cases with the White House. And they certainly didn't discuss them with a representative of the Republican Party. The independence of the enforcement function of the Justice Department has been a principle of biblical proportions since Watergate. I mean, we just didn't do that. And the notion that this guy was at the White House discussing this letter, which precipitated Texas's redistricting effort, is mind-boggling. And it precipitated it with a direction to dismantle cases and dismantle districts based on their racial composition, which is also mind-boggling.
So on the one hand, they go to court and say, absolutely, you cannot use race in map making. And yet You're describing they absolutely use race in map making. What they really mean is there's some races you can use and others you can't.
Right, and they tried to justify it based on this reading, on a reading of the Fifth Circuit decision that said you can't have coalition districts in order to win a Section 2 case. And they drew from that coalition districts were unconstitutional. Well, it doesn't say that. And the reason I know it doesn't say that is that the court remanded the case, sent it back down to the lower court to decide the constitutional issue.
Yeah.
So
really
it was a fig leaf for the use of race in that case.
Yeah. All right. So we see this now in voting rights. Once upon a time, I worked at HUD, and I'm very familiar with the fair housing work that was done. But I now know that this government is not enforcing fair housing laws anymore. That's gone by the wayside. What is, in your view, and I guess I can go back now to that question, where are we with civil rights under the law? What is the law left for civil rights? Are we simply only ever now going to have to appeal directly to the constitutional arguments we have left?
Well, we're certainly not going to get any help from the Justice Department.
No.
We used to, when I was in the Justice Department, we were on the same side, usually, not always, but usually with the groups that were seeking to vindicate civil rights. Now, we are opposed to the Justice Department. They are a steadfast opponent of all the principles that we are trying to establish. There's a story I read the other day. I haven't verified it, but it was I think it was a reputable place that talked about a guy who represented some of the January 6th defendants and who likened the prosecution to the Holocaust and likened the prosecutors to Joseph Mengele. And according to this story, he now works in the Civil Rights Division. And if that doesn't sum it up, I don't know what does.
Well, so here's what I think, and I'd love to get your reaction. For a very long time, those of us who care about civil rights, I think probably after Brown, ever since then, have outsourced the hard work of progress. That's not true. Since the Voting Rights Act, have outsourced the hard work of progress to lawyers and said we can get this done through the courts, and that muscle of building a giant coalition and making a huge political fight atrophied a little bit. And now we're finding that the courts are no longer friendly and are no longer helpful, and the Justice Department's on the wrong side. And the only way to get this back is the way we got it in the first place, which is to organize in mass coalitions.
Well, I think one of the first mistakes was during the Obama administration, there could have been more emphasis on appointing judges from both the White House and the Senate.
Yes.
And, I think that the Republicans were very focused on retaking the Supreme Court. And the way it was retaken with the refusal to vote on Merrick Garland and the untoward rush to vote on Judge Barrett is reflected now in the composition of the court, and it's going to take a very long time to undo it.
Well, I've been waiting to get a lawyer like you on the phone to ask this question. One of the oldest precedents in the country is, of course, Marbury versus Madison. If judicial rule feels to a giant chunk of America like an autocratic tool, maybe the next Congress has to revisit Marbury versus Madison. And I mean, and as to say, look, no, the Constitution says this is up to us. Thank you very much. We pass laws that will enforce the 15th Amendment. That's what it is.
Yeah, I worry that, like so many things, it can cut both ways, because the court for many,
Yes.
and that's important. On the other hand, I was opposed for many years to some of the remedies that were being discussed about packing the court.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think that when the court doesn't behave with the restraint that it should on either side, then I think Congress has to talk about the kinds of remedies it has at its disposal.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons why we're in this pickle where the court is so important is historically, right? I mean, if Congress could have taken on some of these tougher issues, there'd have been a lot of less pressure for every one of them to go to the court. Now, in fairness, they took on voting rights, and the court harder for Congress to act when the court says unlimited dark money in politics is okay.
Yeah, I think our politics is broken, and the court has a lot of responsibility for that.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. I mean, I think some of the worst decisions of all time have been with fairly recent, one of them being the Trump immunity case, another one being the Shelby County versus Holder case, which knocked out the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And both of those cases have, and the campaign finance case, with the dark money.
Citizens United. Yep.
And all of those cases have really reshaped our politics in a very negative way.
Organized to I mean, if all this gerrymandering happens around the country, it's going to be enormously difficult to fight our way back. I mean, up in this little corner of the Great Lakes, Wisconsin was the most gerrymandered state in the nation, and we fought and got it back. But that was a 10-year battle, and it required taking back taking back's the wrong word, getting jurisprudence back on their Supreme Court.
I think it is going to be hard. And, there's been a lot of discussion among my peers as to if we get back in power in the executive branch, what do we do about the Justice Department, which is going to have been populated by ideologues on the right? Do we do what the other side has done? Were we too goody two-shoes when we had the reins of power? Or, are we, should we not step down to the level that they have?
There's an intermediate step, isn't there? You don't have to misuse the Justice Department. In fact, we should not misuse the Justice Department to go after political enemies. But we have to say, if you came here and swore an oath to Donald Trump instead of to the Constitution, you don't belong here. We have to restore an oath to the Constitution. So anybody who took that oath to him is, I'm sorry, you don't belong here because we're going to clean it up. That's not the same thing as weaponizing it on the other side. I mean, if you could just handpick, somebody said, you get to put 4 justices on the Supreme Court. You do. Pick them yourself. You wouldn't pick 4 left versions of Sam Alito or Clarence Thomas. You'd pick people with fealty to the facts and the law and the Constitution. Yes. Right? So it's not, we're not talking apples and apples here. We're talking about they're throwing apples. We are building a citrus farm. It's different.
Yeah, and I do believe that. I think that that's something that is bad. That we believe in good public policy
and processes that protect the public. Yeah,
I'm not going to change that belief.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes feel, that that we might have brought a knife to a gunfight.
Well, I'm here in Chicago where there is a real fight going on in our streets, and my fellow citizens here are not being. I mean, they're bringing their real military weapons, and we are being just as tough without being violent. There's a way to if they bring a gun to the fight, there's a way to fight back without engaging in the same fight, but to be just as tough, just as strong. And that means that we got to get rid of the people there who are part of the problem, for sure.
Yeah.
For me, it means taking the symbols of autocratic power and breaking them. I mean, there's a reason why soldiers who fought to save the Union in the Civil War are buried at Robert E. Lee's, former slave camp plantation. Mar-a-Lago should be the Smithsonian Museum for American Fascism. I mean, we just break them. That's what we need to do. And that doesn't mean we go after our enemies, in violation of the rule of law. It means that we use the processes of law the way they were meant to be used.
Well, I
follow the facts.
I agree with that. But, you also look back at Martin Luther King and, that toughness that folks showed then, really exposing themselves in a nonviolent way to violence. They knew they were going to get the Dickens beat out of them, and they just did it anyway. And
Rob, you're seeing that on the streets of Chicago right now, every day. We are seeing that same level of commitment to move the country forward in the face of the tear gas, in the face of the pellets that are being shot, in the face of their cars ramming into our fellow citizens. I mean, even in that neighborhood where they came out of a Black Hawk helicopter into an apartment building, and I think Americans are seeing this, a terrible abuse of a militarized police function in our cities, and this peaceful but firm response. I mean, I think Chicago's where this fascist movement's going to die. I do.
Yeah, and we just need to maintain our commitment to nonviolence so that the violence is all one way. And that's really hard. I mean, we're fairly comfortable in this country. And, Black people back in the South in the 60s, they had their lives to lose, but, they really were putting it on the line for their kids. And
they put it on their line for all of America. I mean, they made us a better country in every possible way. And that's, I think, what Americans are going to do again. Hey, I wish you the best in these cases.
Thank you.
As you say, I hope lightning strikes again. They are so fundamentally important to America in every way. They're profoundly in sync with the best that's in our Constitution, with the guidance that comes from the Declaration of Independence, and they're profoundly out of sync with this current court. So I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for taking time to talk about these issues with us.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Edwin Eisendrath is taking your calls now at 773-763-9278. The Big Picture is on now. WCPT 820.
All right, Jim, kick us off.
Yeah, busy day, Evan. They're firing all the journalists at the Pentagon with $1 trillion budget in the hands of Hegseth. What could go wrong there? And then this idea that he's going to go after Jack Smith and the senator from California, and he's going to use the IRS to do it. Well, that was done by Putin over 20 years ago. That's how he consolidated power. Not expecting like that to happen, but just the nerve to use our IRS department to go after your political enemies is absolutely nuts. And it's so, and then to see the media just roll over and here's Trump's next announcement, and Here's an announcement. He's going to call Putin next month, and it's so I don't know what you would call it. I've never seen anything like this. But anyway, busy day, and you have a good weekend. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to say it was a great day. I was out, and that's why the show was recorded, in the No Kings rally in downtown Chicago, which was huge and exciting and fun. I have no idea how many people were there because I couldn't see anywhere near the edges of the crowd. And I understand there were rallies all over the city, not just in Chicago. I mean, not just in downtown Chicago. And by the way, in cities all over the country. So if you went to one, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear 773-763-9278. If you've seen a rally or heard about a rally today, I'd love to get your sense. Remember, Mike Johnson said they were pro-Hamas, America-hating Antifa rallies. And I want to say that is not what I saw in downtown Chicago today. I don't think that's what anybody saw. Aren't you sick of their lies about everything? About everything. Sheila from Colorado, what do you think?
Hey, Edwin, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I listen to your program every Saturday. I use the internet so I can get it out here in Colorado. And just got home today from a rally. We were in Littleton, Colorado. There were at least 4,000 people at this intersection. It's a major intersection in the suburb south of Denver. I have no idea yet what they did at the Capitol in downtown Denver. I don't know, because I was out here protesting. So I'll watch the news tonight. We'll see. But we're hearing that it's huge. The numbers of people showing up is huge. And we had, I was out there. Well, I was there June 14th of the first No Kings rally. And to show up today, there were twice as many people there today as there were on June 14th. So it was huge and very joyous, happy, peaceful, very clever signs. It was just a good, positive thing.
And how do you feel when the leaders in the government of the United States look at all of that and say, you hate America, that you're the enemy? I mean, how does that make you feel?
I'm hurt and angry. And it's obviously a lie, and I'm hoping that the majority of people do not believe the lies.
Yeah. I think the good people of Colorado, like the good people here, are beginning to, Trump's poll numbers are cratering for a reason. People don't like it. They don't like the troops in our streets. They don't like the demonizing of each other nonstop. And by the way, they don't like the fact that their prices are going up, and that they lied to us about Jeffrey Epstein and everything else. It's a crazy time, isn't it?
There's so much to be angry about. It's appalling.
Well, listen, I really appreciate your calling. No, really appreciate your calling.
Thank you.
Thank you. You bet. All right, so that's Colorado near Denver. I wonder if any of you folks who are listening on the West Coast had a chance to see any of these rallies and have a sense about what you saw today. I'd love to hear from you, 773-763-9278. In the meantime, I want to say, I got to talk to all kinds of people at this rally, and some were new to Chicago. I talked to one young man. He just moved here from New Orleans. He said he moved here because he just couldn't stand what they're doing down there. And I mean, it was an amazing thing to just talk to somebody new to our city about the things that are happening in our city. And, he was all in on, isn't this awful what ICE is doing here, and how do we help? I mean, he was so impressed with how Chicagoans have wrapped their arms around each other to help each other. Just phenomenal, loving, interesting stuff. Oh, and the costumes down there. I mean, the costumes, the signs. And it was a huge crowd. You could barely move. Oh, and the L going downtown, literally you couldn't move. And we're packed in so much that no matter how much the L shook, there was no place to fall over. I mean, everybody was just jammed in there and happy to be jammed in there because they all knew they were going for a purpose to say to, I don't know who these people are in Washington, but to say to them, this is not our country, man. This isn't how it works. We care about each other. We care for each other. We are not going to let you take it. Not going to happen. Anyway, that was Chicago. You heard from Denver-ish, Denver, around Denver. And, you know, I want to go back to something that I talked about. I mean, I know this show was taped, but that I mentioned in the very, very beginning, because it's such, you know, I think this about our city, and I think it as much now as I did before this rally. This is the city. This is the city, right? We are at the epicenter of the federal effort to attack Americans. We just are. And I think this is the city that effort dies in. It's Waterloo. Anyway, Josh, what do you think?
I'm going to be on the radio. Hello?
No, you are on the radio.
This is Jeff, not Josh.
Okay, well, Jeff, you're on the radio.
Okay. What I wanted to talk about was I've been listening to the station for a couple of weeks and listening to Joan Esposito and Tom Hartman. And, you know, there's a lot of outrage about, you know, the weaponization of the DOJ. And I'm just wondering, there was no, like, she had Jan Schakowsky on, and Jan Schakowsky called it the instead of the Department of Justice, the Department of Retaliation or something along those lines. So how come Jan Schakowsky or none of these folks, I never heard nothing when they were weaponizing the government against Donald Trump? Nothing. Okay. Nobody said a word.
All right. I'll be happy to answer that. Happy to. Okay. Because that question was asked of the guy who actually was in charge of prosecuting, the special prosecutor they brought in. He came out this week and he started to talk. And he said, look, the difference are the facts and the processes. So in the case of Donald Trump, there were a whole bunch of screens. Is this evidence of a crime? Is this evidence sufficient enough so that you would get a conviction? And if it is, then you can go to a grand jury and you can go, because it's not really weaponization, it's doing the law enforcement you're supposed to do. In this case, you have Ed Martin saying, without the Justice Department even knowing, we're going to go ahead and indict people without, even though other people in the department said there's no evidence. That's the difference. The difference is the facts. It's not that, I mean, there are two indictments, for sure, but not all indictments are created equal. The fact patterns are different. And you want your government taking on real crooks. You want your government to enforce the law when the law is broken, and no matter who breaks it, whether that is a former president or anybody else. I mean, and when in the last administration, the Justice Department prosecuted, after all, the president's son, Hunter Biden, was prosecuted by the federal government the same way Donald Trump was in that administration. In this administration, if you are a friend of Donald Trump's, you get pardoned. You don't get prosecuted. It's not similar in any way.
Okay. Well, let me point out one thing.
It's a fair question, by the way, and I know Americans feel that way and are confused a little bit by this, and it's understandable. But
as they should be.
It's a fact difference. It's a difference in the.
Well, here's a fact about Judge Merchan. As he was sitting there saying, I could care less what any of these people have to say, any of these lawyers have to say, whatever the jury has to say, I could care less about anything. This guy is guilty. He's guilty. We don't even have to have this trial. He's guilty. And here's a nice fact for that case. His daughter was working for Kamala Harris to get her elected. His daughter is a third partner in a business downtown Chicago, working for Kamala Harris, trying to get her elected while her political opponent was being politically persecuted by her father. Now, are you kidding me?
So
who's got the nerve? Who's got the nerve to say that he's weaponizing the government?
Everybody who's looked. Everybody who seriously looked, every former member of even Republicans. This is not partisan. Every law school dean, hundreds of former judges of both parties. There is a difference. There is a big difference between going after, and as I said in the last administration, they found reason to indict Donald Trump for January 6th, I might add, something we all saw was a crime. And they went after Hunter Biden for something that was barely a crime, but they did. They went after him. And you know what? No one on your side said, oh, they're going after Hunter Biden. Gee whiz, they're weaponizing justice. And said, oh, they're not going after Hunter Biden tough enough. And yet they prosecuted him. Here, George Santos got pardoned yesterday. All those January 6th people got pardoned yesterday. This is an administration that has a list. The president said, these are the people you will indict, and they're going down the list indicting them. And if you can't see the difference, you are not looking with big enough eyes. I urge you to take a breath, take a deep breath, take a walk around the block, and look again, and look with all your heart, and see if you can't tell the difference. All right, who's next? Jeff? Josh? I don't know. Who's next?
I'm Jeff.
Okay, hello. Yep.
Hi, I'm from Elgin, but I actually was at a No Kings out here in Park Ridge, just outside the city, like on the very edge of the city, earlier today with some friends. And I just wanted to point out that the GOP has done so much lip service over the last couple of weeks about how these people are commies and terrorists and blue hairs and getting paid by George Soros, and the broad demographic that showed up for this No Kings rally in a suburb of Chicago could not have been further from the truth. These people all clearly on any other Saturday would have had someplace else to be and something better to do, but they took time out of their day and whatever was going on in their lives to come out because it was important and it was something that meant something to them. There were families, there were old folks, there were young kids, there was everything in between. It was kind of beautiful, and it's kind of the funeral moment where you feel like, gosh, we have to find better reasons to get together like this. And I just wanted to say that all that downplaying they've been trying to do, especially Mike Johnson's office, about how this is the fringe and these are the radicals, and could not have been further from the truth from what I saw.
Well, hang on. So you didn't get a check from George Soros?
I did not. I'm still waiting on that. I don't know if HR has caught up with me yet with my paperwork or what.
And you haven't contributed to Antifa? You don't have a card?
I actually haven't made any political contributions in this last cycle at all because I've just, it's not that kind of budget for me right now.
Yep. Well, wow. I mean, you can't contribute to Antifa because it's not actually a thing. So, well, that's right. I'm thrilled that you were there. I'm thrilled that you are bearing witness to what you saw there. And it's so important that we tell the truth because, as you heard from the guy who called before, just people have been lied to so much. I don't blame that poor guy. People have been lied to so much with such megaphones, telling stories that are just not true and making it hard for people to see the truth. And so thank you for bearing witness.
Yeah, the disinformation's got to stop because it's not helping anything.
Yeah, it's not going to stop. So we have to find a way to outrun it with the truth. And it's going to be tough,
sir.
But we got to do it. All right, well, thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Yep. Well, guys, I really appreciate your being with me. For those of you who were able to be out at the rally, that's great. If you weren't able to go but are participating sort of vicariously by, looking at the pictures of the rallies all over the country and talking to people who went, I really appreciate it. Let's bear witness. Let's tell the truth. Let's get out there in every possible way. Oh, I got one more caller. I thought it was done. We can squeeze in Robert. Robert, come on. You can close us up.
I'll be really quick. Has there been any effort from the Attorney General from Arizona to sue Speaker Johnson? You know, he hasn't sat a delegate, you know, that she represents about 710,000 people, blocking their voice. He sat Republican delegates where their races were much closer. Has there been any lawsuit filed there or any effort to hold him accountable for his
I do not believe that. I do not believe there's been there's litigation. What I think is that there's no vote to be had anyway. The moment, I mean, she could sue, I suppose, for loss of salary, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't take legal advice from me. But the moment they come back in session, the moment he ends the vacation that he sent these Republicans on, even though the government is shut down and there's no budget, Mike Johnson has declared a vacation, and he won't let them back in. The moment they do come back in, she will be sworn in and seated. And you know why you know why they're holding her out, right? Because of Jeffrey Epstein
files. Yeah. You got it. No.
Yeah. But I can't end this beautiful day talking about Jeffrey Epstein as much as Trump is up to his neck in that. You know what he's really up to his neck in? Americans who care about this country, who showed up today, who showed that we aren't going to sit around and take it. People who do not buy his lies, people who will not buy his lies, but instead people who demand that the truth come out and that we protect each other and that together we build a future. And there is no place for the kind of leadership we are getting in Washington as we build that country. Thank you all for being with me. I will be with you next week, not having to record it all in advance so that I can go to a rally. You take care. Thanks.
Volunteering is an opportunity to make a huge difference.
I'm a part of the solution.
Do you want to make a difference? If you volunteer, you can. Making a difference for you, your community, and your country. Join America's Volunteers. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Just now, another kid dropped out of school. There's one every 20 seconds. If we do nothing, 3.5 million kids won't receive a diploma over the next 4 years. But there is someone who can change that. You. United Way knows that kids who have a caring adult in their life are more likely to make it. So make a pledge. Tutor. Mentor. Volunteer to read with children. And the difference between a dropout and a graduate could be you. Take the pledge to volunteer now at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.